What's up, everybody? I'm Damon Hatfield here with Brian Altano.
Hello.
And this is a piece we've been kicking around the IGN work from home offices for a few days now, wondering if 2020's biggest games will be delayed due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And lo and behold, yesterday, one of 2020's absolute biggest games, The Last of Us Part 2, was delayed indefinitely. So, Brian, how does that have you feeling about the rest of the year? We did just get a big influx of AAA games in the past few weeks with Animal Crossing, Doom Eternal, now Resident Evil 3, and then Final Fantasy VII Remake. But what does the rest of the year look like now?
The FF7 Remake thing is interesting because that actually got bumped up a few days. So
for some people.
For some people, yeah. So that's been sort of a nice little bonus in this sea of bad news. But yeah, we found out yesterday that The Last of Us Part 2 is getting delayed, along with Iron Man VR, which was sort of tucked in at the end of Sony's statement. And so it got us really thinking, what does this mean for everything else? The Last of Us Part 2 has been delayed multiple times. The game's been in development for years now. It's probably one of the most expensive single-player games ever made. But the interesting thing about this story was that for the first time in the game development's history, Naughty Dog themselves did not delay this game. This was a decision by Sony. And so digging into it a little bit, we found out that Neil Druckmann said that the decision was out of their hands. This was a Sony decision. And so ultimately, I think what this comes down to is we have currently in the world no kind of brick and mortar retail store infrastructure in the traditional sense like we used to. You could hypothetically check the video game section of Walmart when you're there picking up groceries with a mask on and such. But right now, the amount of foot traffic going into retail stores is essentially non-existent, with non-essential stores like GameStop being shut down. And so while you and me, Damon, and thousands, millions, and even billions of people listening to this video right now, are in the know, and maybe some of us are thinking about we could order these games online, we could get them digitally. Ultimately, these games mostly sell to people who walk into stores and see them for the first time. Especially something like Iron Man. It's a big IP, and while I have a PSVR, I'll just download that game when it's ready. I think a lot of people walking into a store will see Iron Man on a shelf and they'll be like, I can be Iron Man, and then they'll buy the game. And so removing that, you are actually taking away millions of dollars in sales, and also that's not very good business for somebody like Sony, who has been funding games like this for a very long time. So selfishly, I want to be like, put it out digitally right now if it's done, but I have to respect the needs of them as a business, and also the consumers all over the place that don't want a digital game or don't have the internet for it.
It's also worth noting that with a game as big as The Last of Us, a big exclusive game for Sony, they may have deals in place with retailers that prevent them from just putting it out digitally.
Sure. Yeah. One more thing about The Last of Us. I do think that an interesting part of this game specifically, and we'll see the same for, I think, many games this year, is that it's not just a $60 video game. It's also a collector's edition with statues and limited edition collectibles. And so you need to get the factories going for all those things. You needed to get the discs printed, the boxes printed, statues made, backpacks, all the fun stuff that's getting included with all these things. So all of that gets sort of knocked down too.
If all of a sudden everyone can download the game, the people that paid extra for the collector's edition would be probably pretty ticked off about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Ghost of Tsushima would be the next big game coming out that we know of. It's just less than a month after The Last of Us Part 2. What are the chances that that game makes its release date? June 26th, I believe.
It's a really good question. I mean, we've got a couple of sort of AA shaped games coming up in the next few weeks, like Gears Tactics, Minecraft Dungeons, Predator Hunting Grounds. I think all of those will probably stick to their release dates. But Ghost is an interesting one for me because I think that a lot of the people working on that game, they're now at the finish, rushing to the finish line. Hopefully not crunching, but hopefully doing, dotting the I's and crossing the T's and such on game development. And so that entire team at Sucker Punch suddenly had to move everything to a work from home scenario, which has got to be a little bit daunting when you're working on a massive open world, HD 4K AAA video game. But more interestingly enough is that the way Sony has their year paced out, The Last of Us and Iron Man sort of had their own breathing room. and so did Ghosts. And I think all of those things were supposed to sort of hit every few months, leaving just enough space for things to quiet down and for brand new next-gen consoles to launch. And so now I wonder how many of these things are sort of going to start butting up against each other. Like, will The Last of Us, which has now been delayed indefinitely, which is a very scary word. You and I've been doing this for a long time. We don't hear that a lot.
That's true.
So I'm wondering if that will start to knock the dominoes over and push Ghosts into something like August or September, which is now once again butting up even closer to the hypothetical next-gen launches in November. So yeah, I think that, coupled with the fact that the studio is now figuring out how to work from home, working on, maybe going into the office, taking turns, getting monitors and stuff like that.
Yeah, September is also the launch month of Cyberpunk and Marvel's Avengers. So if you just want to throw Last of Us into there, that month starts to get pretty crowded.
Yeah, exactly. Or even if Ghost moves to there, like there's just so many moving parts here. And I think that everybody has to sort of be mindful of where to step. And so that's interesting too. And Avengers and Cyberpunk are now being worked on from home. And what does that look like? You can't really, you and I can do this kind of stuff from here, but you can't really mocap from home, I
don't know. Now I want to try it. We usually get the release dates for the back half of the year at E3. Of course, E3 isn't happening in the same way that it usually does, but we know publishers are sort of scrambling to put together some digital presentations where we will get some release dates for the back half of the year. I guess I just wonder how much those release dates are being affected by the ongoing pandemic right now. I guess we'll never know if a game was supposed to come out in July and now that game's being pushed back to October or November.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think you nailed it. There's so much that is happening that's bad news that we don't know about, which is sort of a relief. But on the flip side, I think that like anybody finishing a next-gen game right now that's supposed to align with the launch in November, hypothetically, is going through the same struggles as anybody who's working on any other game that is currently announced.
Yeah.
And so, not only are big delays happening right before us for development reasons and also for retail reasons, but I think there's also a lot of hidden delays happening that we can't even see. And I think they're going to affect the launch of these next-gen consoles and whether or not, they're going to be worth the $500, $600 asking price.
Yeah, exactly.
There's very few times in history where you can launch a console with just a very few games. One of them was the N64, which only had 2 games, but one of those games was Mario. So it's okay.
Yeah, and neither of those next-gen consoles are going to have Mario. We know that for sure.
No.
But we are going to have Mario on the Switch, apparently, a bunch of remasters. Anyway, I know it's a blow to not be getting Last of Us Part 2 in May. Now all eyes are on Ghosts of Tsushima to see whether or not it can hit its release date. But viewers, let us know how you're feeling about the release dates for the rest of the year. Are you worried? Talk about it in the comments, and stay tuned for more on all things video games here at IGN.